I want to start off first with just before we get into the logistics of the experience and all that jazz, I just want to talk about service. I think the NAR situation is redefining service across the board and what the expectations of that service is. And so you guys have been in the game for a long time. Each of you have, unique experiences in your history of real estate. And so I think the conversation first off is, how do you define service in real estate, working with your clients, and what are the expectations that they can expect from you?
From a buyer's perspective?
Absolutely. Who wants to go first?
So we started the conversation?
Yeah, let's start the conversation.
Go ahead, Amanda.
You go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, I've always prided myself on building a trusting relationship. I think that's key. You are about to embark on a journey to buy one of the biggest, most expensive financial asset in your life. Many of them in our area are first-time home buyers. They don't have a clue. They don't know what they don't know. So I think as a buyer's agent, it's my job to make them feel comfortable and trusting and give them the answers to the questions they haven't yet asked. So I think by setting the expectation of here's how the process works, here's how we're going to do it, and here's what I expect from you while we're on this journey. And don't be afraid not to ask the question, because the question you failed to ask is the one I really needed to answer for you. And I don't want you going into something not knowing everything you need. So I think that we play a pivotal role as a buyer's agent, especially for those that have never bought a home or never bought a home in the state of Florida, which can be different than it is in other states. I think we are very pivotal and informative, and I think we share the biggest part of their journey, and hopefully they'll be very happy.
What are some of the questions that you need to ask off the bat that maybe the buyers, in the beginning process, they don't know to ask? So what are some of those questions?
So I think you have to start with asking, what is your desire? What are you looking at? Have you been pre-approved? Because the last thing you want to do is take somebody out and then fall in love with a home that they then find out is way out of their budget. And then what happens? Every home you see after that, they compare to the number one home that they fell in love with. So you don't want to have that disappointment. So educating them, setting them up with a lender so that you can shop within their budget, I think is very important. Ask them, is there a specific school area? Because we do have a lot of buyers that come in here and may have families that are in either they're athletic and they want to be, in a certain area where they offer the same athletics or education, maybe, higher curriculum. So you need to find that out and try to help them. But I think the biggest thing is showing them the area, giving them options, and then listen when you're showing.
Yeah.
You gain so much more insight when you listen as you're showing them, because you may pick up, they keep saying this, and so then when you're looking for other homes to show them, you hone in and try to find the thing. And I often tell them, you're not going to agree. You have a wish list. You have a wish list. They may not all be the same, but in the end, you're going to fall in love with the property, and that wish list is not going to matter.
Yeah. I mean, Ronnie, where do you find, I think when people move here from other parts of the country, they don't fully understand the lifestyle, and I think that's what Abbott Martin Group does really well, is to envelop people into explaining how to live here. So what are some of the questions that you usually ask buyers from out of state and working with them, and how they live when looking for properties?
That's really good point. I think it's just my question is typically, how do you all spend your time outside of the home? What is your typical weekend? What do you all enjoy doing outside of your day-to-day? And I think with the knowledge that the majority of on this team have, it's easy for us to kind of pinpoint an area where we can essentially set the lot in. If they tell me they like to a beach and to kind of hang out at a bar where they can walk to, and an area that's a little bit slower, I've got an area in mind for. Or if they say, hey, big on family, love done communities, that'll be close to restaurants and shops, but don't want to be south of 98 or on 38, I know basically want. And so I think that's just really key, is to ask them, how do you spend your time? What do y'all enjoy doing as a family outside of your day-to-day? it typically could find those for you.
Yeah,
I think that's super important for, like you said, like guiding them into the right area, because if they're new here, they're not going to know where those hot spots are, where the best, maybe they want to be near Gaston Commons where all the shopping is, maybe they want to be near more of the state parks or the, pedestrian and bike paths. And I think that's unique about a lot of us being longtime locals here is being able to kind of show them a different side of the area and really like connect them with the place that we feel like they be best at, because they may not know that right off the bat. I think another thing too is really having transparency, especially in the condo market, because condos are a lot different here than other places. I think it's our job to educate the customers. So for instance, a lot of people think they can just get a 5% down loan for a condominium, and that can be heartbreaking if they found the perfect one. They're like, wait, I need 25% down in cash. I don't have that. I can't buy any condo here, because a lot of our condos are rental based. So just knowing off the bat that, most likely you're gonna have to do 20 to 25% down and preparing them for that in the beginning. So if that's not the right route for them, then you can find them a great home community, maybe that's close to the beach that still gives them what they're looking for. I think also with condominiums, sometimes people get scared of the HOA fees, and they may not fully understand what that means. It's like, it's actually kind of more of a convenience for you because it already covers your water and your sewer and your cable and your internet. And that insurance policy, which can be challenging here, is already handled by the condominium and staff. And sometimes people are like, well, I want a lower fee. And I'm like, well, that also could mean that you could have a $10,000 charge down the road when they need to put a new roof on the building. And like just being really transparent with that in the beginning so they know what to expect, and educating them on that, I think, is key for either the investment buyer or for the family that wants to be able to enjoy a condo and have that lifestyle that they're looking for. So
segueing to James, because I think new construction is such a big part of our world right now. When it comes to the buyer experience, we know that new construction has its advantages and disadvantages, and one of those is timelines. And I think one of the things that's always a talking point with new construction is, how do I create the expectation of what this timeline looks like? And feel free to jump in on that.
Sure. And sometimes like in new construction, we do have a move-in ready product, which is always good. But typically we're gonna, build the home, and it's gonna take 8 to 11 months to build, so that's a long relationship, and a lot longer than typically the 30 or 45 day transaction, right? So I'm in it for sometimes a year with these folks and everything. So it's managing the expectations is everything. With new construction, it's a little bit different because I don't always get the laundry list like you guys get of all this. I'm kind of setting the precedent of this is our lane and we're going to stay in it. You know what I mean? A little bit, so, and still add that value and that customer services. This is what we do. It's not a custom build. That's probably the biggest expectation I got to kind of manage sometimes. But we have a tremendous product, and I'll put it up against anyone in the area.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I think the setting expectations is kind of like the segue next question that I want to go into is, how do you, in a new relationship with somebody potentially you've never met before, maybe it's a cold lead that you found, or somebody that's a referral, no matter how you came together, how do you create the expectations at the beginning, and how do you exceed their expectations? I think that's kind of question number 2 here, in that buyer's relationship.
I think kind of delivering what they need ahead of time before asking is a huge thing. So for instance, if it's new construction, like send those updates every couple of weeks and show them the progress of the house that's being built. A lot of times they're not here locally all the time. Right. We're getting a little more of that residential buyer, but I think, being in the loop on property knowledge, like we go to the property tours and see what's new on the market, and you could walk into that house like this one, be like, oh my gosh, this is perfect for the buyer that I've been trying to find the right house for 3 months, or more sometimes 1 year, right? And then if you're not taking your steps as an agent to be ahead of the curve and to be learning those properties all the time, you may miss a really good opportunity. So I think like kind of delivering that in advance before they're like, hey, what's going on down there? You be the one to say, I was just at this amazing property today. I think you're really gonna love it. Here's a little preview, right? Or, hey, your inspection report's gonna come back next week. I'm just going to talk with you a little bit about that in advance. Like there may be some things on there that seem like it's a big deal, but this is stuff that I deal with all the time, day to day. I have great vendors I can knock this stuff out for you guys. Like leave that pressure up to me and kind of take that off of them. Because a lot of times, especially if it is, first time home buyer, they're like, oh my gosh, the
house is crashing.
The AC needs to be cleaned and the ice is not working and all that stuff. And they might see 20 of those items and we're like, oh, this is only 1 page long, not a big deal, we can handle this, And so I think just like being able to counteract that reaction and keep them calm and comfortable and then handle those things for them. It's a big thing with being a realtor that's surpassing maybe the general list.
I agree. I think that was great. That just summed it up so perfectly, really, because it is important. And I think transparency and I think communication is key. Being responsive and not reactive is very important. And, because they're reacting right when they get that inspection report and the world's falling apart and I'm going to buy a terrible house. And we're like, no, this is easy peasy, man. Usually I have things that are 2 or 3 pages long and you've only got 6 items. We're great.
Yeah.
Helping things with the lender. When you mentioned about condos, sharing with them that it's more important to condos in Florida because Florida's condos don't meet the cookie cutter condo checklist in other states. And it's going to come to a halt 2 weeks before closing. So use our local lender and explaining the whys for that, explaining about the insurance. Just, again, going up and beyond and keeping them posted, especially when the construction timeline gets delayed. You're going to explain, we've been delayed because we didn't get this or whatever the cost may be. I think a lot of customers feel like they don't hear enough. There's that silent period and they're kind of like, what's going on?
Right.
Are you like gliding on the water like the duck, but your feet are going like this? But I don't know what the feet are doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to educate them.
Yeah.
I think it all starts up front, right? The more time you invest up front, the deeper conversations you have, you can get really dialed in on exactly what they're looking for and add value, you know what I mean? And so the more you do that up front, it saves you so much more time to streamline the process. We shouldn't be looking at 1,000 properties. We should be able to get this narrowed down to the 5 to 10 that are really dialed in on everything.
That's what's so interesting. I think I even guide some of the agents, newer agents on our team sometimes, because they're like, oh, well, I was in Fort Walton and Panama City and Destin all in the same day. I'm like, no, how about you focus on New York City one day and just the top 5 properties? And they don't know any of the neighborhoods. I'm like, give them some areas to go see on their own. They can go do that on their leisure, and they're going to know in the first 5 minutes if that's the part of town they want to be in. Give them some assignments all
but
this in advance.
there's that thing too of I'd be interested to know what's your number one discovery question that you ask in the first piece of engagement, with a new client? Because for me, it's always, well, how do you want to live? When, coming from a design background and marketing, it's always it goes back to what Ronnie said earlier, it's the lifestyle. How do you want to live? If you've lived in a major market, you want a little bit of bustle maybe, you want that dynamic nightlife, things to do, event-driven type living and lifestyle. Maybe you don't want it like New York City and San Francisco, but how do you find that little pocket where you live? So I'm interested to know what everybody's number one discovery question that you think maybe other agents forget, but it's your go-to.
I think one of my first questions essentially is going to be, what's the purpose of the home? Because if it's an investment home, a strict investment where they're just trying to run numbers, I know that it's not going to be as intimate as, say, somebody that says a true second home or a primary residence. Now, I don't do many private residential homes, but that's a very intimate relationship you have with these people. Those are the type of transactions where carpets in a bedroom matter.
Size of the backyard matters.
Right. Those are very intimate questions you have to have, and conversations you have with people, because ultimately that is their home. Now, when you're looking at the investment side of things, you're amazing at as well. It's numbers driven. We tell somebody the walls are white, and they're like, okay, well, whatever, I can paint them. It's not a big deal. It's the lack of intimacy in those transactions, I think, and those questions you ask help you kind of determine how this journey is going to be with these folks. And I think that's it. You set expectations, like James said. You're clear with communication, and I'll be the first to say it. I mean, even having conversations amongst the team, even in our trainings that we have, you'll come to realize very early that us acting at the bare minimum, a lot of times is other patients working at their prime. And I mean, I'll say that over and over again. That's the truth. Us on our bare minimum bad days, because we all have them, I would put us up against the best of the best. Is saying that us here, when we think we're here, is a lot of other agents that believe they're here.
We set higher expectations.
And that's from the very beginning. When you join this
Core
team,
value.
you join this team and you realize that right away. It's almost like iron does sharpen iron. And I'll be the first to say we do a lot of trunsactions, and how many times when we walk away from those transactions and we're like, hey, that other agent was just amazing. Not to speak badly, but it's just it's the truth sometimes. We go back to it and we're like, man, our team does do a really good job.
It was so funny. We had a
Not to speak badly at all.
No, well, you want to be I want somebody to walk away from any engagement with me and say, that is a next level human being. That was a next level
of service.
It was a different level of service. That communication that I received was so different than anything I even expected.
Right.
And that, in the nature of our business is referral generating, right? And I think that's what people, right? We're all a little short-sighted. We can get short-sighted. And I think by not creating an opportunity to exceed an expectation, to communicate at a higher level, to provide service at a higher level, we're really defaulting ourselves on creating the next opportunity.
I think that's part of what we're dealing with the changes in real estate too, is like how are we able to truly show our value to people? And I think that us as a team and as individuals have a lot to offer both buyers and sellers, and I think we can easily communicate that to where that experience is going to be different than some of the others. Like as you say with the agents, I had one the other day, and it was so funny. It's actually a house that I was purchasing with a partner. The partner is our prior buyers of mine. And at the end of it, the agent was so amazing. Like she was just incredible, like so communicative, so sweet, very easy to work with. And that is kind of the rarity sometimes.
Right.
And so at the end of it, there's 4 of us involved in the transaction, the buyers. And the guys were confused because the other person and I were like, gosh, man, that Jen was just so amazing. Like, we want to do something nice for her. Should we take her to dinner or like get her a gift certificate on a massage or something? And then the guys in the mix, they're like, are you giving her a gift certificate just for her doing your job well? And I was like, yes.
It's that rare.
Because she was so exceptional. She really stood out, and like we want to be that for our customers. But it's such a nice situation to see that as the reciprocating agent as well, because they're our best allies in business. So it's like, hey, I don't mind giving her an extra pat on the back because she really, exceeded the expectations of what we're used to. So.
Well, it goes back to we work in a very elevated customer experience. We sell elevated, a very high price point product. And so it goes back to how do you show value? I think that is always, in this room, I can look at each of you and I know exactly, because I work with each of you all day long, I know where you provide value. And I think for a lot of agents that start off as buyer's agents or begin the early phases of their careers, you ask them the same question, well, where do you provide value? And you kind of see them glaze over. And what do you do besides open up doors? It kind of segments me into my next question, which is what value do you provide as agents that takes the buyer's experience to the next level? Go for it.
So I focus on video a lot, and even social media aside, when I'm communicating with buyers and stuff on my phone, I don't send them a lot of text. I send them a video message real quick, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Hey guys, I'm running through you real quick. Here's your mirrors are in, whatever it is. The appraisal came back, and just communicate directly with them on video. I just think it's more engaging, and you get your message across a lot better with that. So I'm just all in on video and technology in general. I think that helps a lot in my case.
That's a more personal touch too. And I think that's an important thing to ask is how do you like to be communicated with?
Yeah.
Somebody's a CEO and super busy, he might only want email and text, right? And then other people are going to be like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. But asking those questions at the beginning, because every person's different of what they want in a house and also how they want to be communicated with through the transaction. Or somebody might be like, hey, just tell me once every 2 weeks what's going on, or somebody else might want to be communicated with every couple of days, right? So I think that's something, but I touched on it a little bit earlier about what I feel, I guess, a superpower or something different that I may be able to offer the customer. One is just being native to here, knowing the area really well, so being able to offer a different perspective of like where all the best restaurants are, and just having the ins and outs of all the communities, because a lot of people, like I live in 38 and it's amazing and it's beautiful, and there's a little bit of a pulse here with restaurants and things like that, but the fact that I also lived in Fort Walton and in Destin and Miramar Beach, have condos in Panama City, like I've actually had a first-hand experience in all different parts of town, whereas somebody that just moved here, like they may only know San Jose Beach, right? And they might share property in Destin, but do they truly know how that community works by spending time there, So I think that's a plus, but also, like just being able to, I love the idea of being able to calm them down in times where things seem hard to deal with. I think that's really our job as an agent, is to take that pressure off of them and help reassure them that we got this, we know how to handle this, we've done this, and that comes with experience too. It does. Being able to hear Nathan's experiences, the TJ's experiences of being in business for so long. Like if there's a fire that comes up that we got to put out, like most of the time, us here on this couch know how to handle it, but even if we don't, we have the leaders ahead of us that really have handled almost any situation that's come up in real estate. And so being able to have that kind of backing as a group, I think is huge, because we can really get through any obstacle, and that's not always the case with somebody branded in the industry.
Absolutely.
I think that the biggest thing is, as you touched upon, we have to learn to nurture. This is a nurture relationship, and they're not a transaction. It's a relationship. And so just because, I run across agents, and, I've been the buyer's agent and they're the listing agent, and I'm asking for information, and they're like non-responsive, or they won't send me what I've asked for, which they're required to send me. And I think as a buyer's agent, I by helping them work through issues, especially with negotiations, sharing with them the ins and outs, what we can do, giving them options, let them be a part of it. Don't just go and say, well, just tell me what you think you want to offer. How do you want to write? No, let's talk about it. Let's look at it. Let's get it. We can ask for this, or we can ask for that. We can structure it this way, or we can structure what works for you. And then when they're doing their inspection report, they don't have the vendors, right? They don't know where to go to get the information. They rely upon us. And if I don't know where to go, because after 20 years, there's still things I don't know, I'm going to go and find out, hey, we see this in our group chat, right? I hit you up for roofers, you hit me up for lenders, we're always looking for something from somebody. And we deliver that to our buyers. Whatever it is they need, we're there for them all the way to the closing table. And then we don't leave them there.
Right.
We still nurture that relationship years after. So I think that's the other thing the Abbott Martin Group does, is we view our customers as part of the family. It's part of the family. And when this is done, you are not done with us, because we're not done with you.
Yeah, I think it is. It's so accurate. I mean, it goes back to my favorite quote of all time is Maya Angelou. It's not what you say, it's not what you do, it's how you make people feel.
Absolutely.
And if you don't make someone feel, and that is such a unique, accountability piece from a buyer's and seller's agency. I know years ago when I had my shop in Mississippi, and it's been 13 years, and to have young people that will come back and say, do you remember that thing that you did for me that was it mattered to me? Or their parents would say, do you know how you changed my child's, that moment, how they felt self-esteem? It's like, those are the tearjerker moments of like, I was just being me, right? I was just doing me. I was doing what I knew to be right in that situation, and the impact that it creates. And it's the same thing with the home buying process, right? It is one of the largest decisions you're ever going to make in your life, and it can be passed down generationally too. You're impacting your family on a financial level, from a security standpoint, all of those emotional pieces that are tied to who we are as people, and we right? People in this business are given the opportunity to connect with somebody and be the guide through that process. And I think it's so unique in the world of sales, where things are, you're not going to a perfume counter, right? It's not just a transaction and maybe they'll come back to you after they run out. It's truly something that the way that they live is the package that you presented to them and how you help them get to that goal. I want to segue into challenges in the transaction and how the buyer's agent can be kind of the beacon of hope through those challenges. So I would love for each of you to share kind of like situational moments where you were met with a major challenge and how you navigated around that. I don't take a moment to think about it, but I just think on the flip side, on the consumer end, sometimes the customer doesn't know how you navigate the challenges without them even knowing it. I know from lenders, we all have lender friends that are in the business, our preferred lenders that we work with, and the conversations will something be to the effect of, well, they think that they can purchase this much, but I actually ran the numbers. And I know that I'll speak to Shevlin. We had this conversation last week where she jumped in and she was like, hey, if you can knock this out over the next 6 months, come back and we can get you the application for that home. And so I know that we do that from the real estate side as well. So that's kind of where I want you guys to jump in and share some of those moments if you
it
could.
could be something small too, like they
Totally.
have to pay off $2,000 on a credit card to get the right debt to income ratio.
100%.
To buy a house. So like sometimes it's like just
Small moves for
helping
big
present
wins.
that.
Yeah.
And it's
Small
like-
moves, big
like,
wins.
maybe-
I love that.
Yeah, their response would be like, oh my gosh, you can't afford a home. And it's like, hey, let's figure out how to do this. Like that's where you're overcoming an obstacle and working with the lender and really getting real information on what are these things that we can do that can adjust that. And it may be a really short process. And then how great is that you're that person that helps push them
Sure.
to that next level
Sure.
to get what they were trying to accomplish.
And sometimes they've been turned away by other lenders, but you happen to have the one that knew how to work through it and got them there.
That's
Yeah,
huge.
I have a history of that years ago. Somebody just wasn't going to get there. I said, here's what we need to do. Let's give it 6 months and come back. And they're still in that house today, and it's been 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Lisa the other day because I am on the listing side quite a bit. So I was like, who do you feel is the best lender for a first-time home buyer and an entrepreneur? Two separate people, but the entrepreneur is involved with 5 different companies. Well, how does that work out? I'm like, but they're qualified. But like he actually got turned down by somebody, and I said, look, let me get you in touch with the right people because I know how hard you work. I know how much you're involved, and like. That lender just might not have known the right dynamic on how to do the right type of loan for you.
Or think outside the stance.
That's it.
Yeah, so like
Right.
some good people, let me get you in touch with the right people and get you in the right place to where you are ready to at home. And I think that's a huge win to be able to help guide them and offer them that when they
Right.
had hit walls before.
Right.
It's like you being creative and out of the box and getting them in touch with the right people to be able to push through the walls or the boundaries that they have.
Well, it goes back to like people sitting on the sofa, you're great problem solvers. And I think in real estate, you just have to be a problem solver. You have to be solution driven, where so many will throw their hands up in the air and they're like, I don't know, who do I call for this? You have to be proactive in your thinking, 10 steps ahead of the issue, but just to have really solid problem solving skills, I think is a mastery in this business.
I think, again, it goes back to you give them all the information they need so they make the best informed decision for themselves, right? So I had a situation where you then have to become the listener and, again, the counselor, the hugger, because I had a situation, friends of mine, they bought the dream home they wanted on a lake, and the wife was so excited. Just, literally 10 days, 15 days before closing, she drops dead.
Wow.
I'm like, oh my God. Okay, well, we just need to be still.
Take
Just
a pause.
just take a
Yeah.
pause. I reached out to the listing agent, it was wonderful. She's still a dear friend of mine. I said, I need grace. I just need grace.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what he's gonna do. He could still want to move forward with this, but he may not. Would you please have this discussion with your seller and give us some time?
That's it.
And they did. And I didn't push him. I said, I'm here for you. What do you need from me? And then one day he called and he said, can we meet somewhere? And I thought, oh, he's made a decision. I had no idea which way it was going to go. And he said, she loved that home. I'm going to move into that home. I'm moving forward.
Probably would make him feel her spirit.
He's still there. He's gotten remarried, you know, and yeah, it's a great home for him and his family and grandkids and all that. But it was that time that you just have to take pause. You know, again, it's not about the transaction. It's not about getting to the finish line. It's about taking care of the customer.
Yeah,
Well, and having the customer be the priority, like, because you can tell when somebody's in desperation to get the deal done. And it's like, well, it's really not about
that's
that.
probably
You're on a
first step.
timeline. You still
Yeah.
need to perform.
Yeah.
No.
But also like guiding them sometimes, like say they just had a bad day and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't do it, I'm canceling. Letting them process that a little bit and saying, hey, I totally understand how you're feeling with that, but we're unfortunately out of the due diligence period, so there could be some consequences for that. Can we really understand what the reason is? Like, you know, and a lot of times it could be something minor that you can talk through with them, and then they still get to secure a great property. So I think it's knowing when to help nudge in the right direction, and knowing, in your case, take a step back and just let them pause and process.
And they just need to sleep on it. The
That's
next
it.
day, it's a bright new day.
And not like, oh my gosh, you can't, like, no, you can't cancel and be reprimanding.
And on the other side of things, sometimes you gotta give him a shove.
That's what I mean.
I got a great buddy of mine.
It's
He
like a
tells
nice nudge.
he tells me every time. He's like, "Man, thank you for pushing me off that ledge back in 2020."
I needed it.
You know what I mean? Because if he didn't, he would have missed the boat. And
Yeah, 50
What
years
did I say?
more,
Man.
something like that.
Skin in the game is huge.
That's-
Yeah.
And again, this is, I think one of the issues I've come across, I think quite a few, but I think it was
with investors, yeah, right.
I think it was more so the difference in insurance costs for, say, to Georgia.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, they got a pre-approval. They know what they can spend and what they can comfortably afford based off of what they're bringing in. But it was more so how insurance costs here in Florida were so much more expensive than in another state that it did affect their purchasing power.
Right.
I mean, it was substantial. You're talking 200,000 in some cases.
Right.
And so when they come in thinking like, hey, I want to spend 1.2 on a home, and then they look at those insurance costs, and they're like, oh, we got to reduce numbers because I was not expecting that. Now we're looking at an $800,000 house.
Right.
Now we're crunching numbers as far as what their cap rate
Right.
looks like.
Right.
As we all know, there's that sweet spot where you stay under to have a high. And so you just have to kind of reevaluate, revisit things. And that was something I ran into probably 6 or 7 times
I mean, I had one
in 1 year.
where I couldn't even get approval at all until like the last week before the closing.
Right.
It was a Bayfront home, and literally nobody would do insurance at all because it was just when a lot of stuff had just happened.
Right.
But we figured it out, and she's like, I can't close the house, we can't get insurance. And we were able to talk to multiple people and like get the right person in there to really get the job done. And like that goes, again, goes back to the relationships.
Yeah, and that's huge. And knowing who to reach out to. You've got one insurance guy that won't work. You've got 17 others you can call.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or 6 others that have actual relationships.
6 good ones.
That's it. Well, no, it's the relationships.
Yeah.
You've got 6 of them that you actually
Yeah.
have relationships with personally and professionally. That's huge. Not only can I like that.
Right.
Or Lisa calls and she goes, hey, give me a roofer.
Yeah.
I know 3 that I'm really good friends with. One maybe doesn't work out. I've got another one for you. And she's like, he's perfect.
Yeah.
Not a lot of folks have those type of
Yeah.
connections where you can reach out. And most of the time we're scrolling Google or looking on Facebook or
Right.
looking through just
Yeah,
online.
they're on, you know, hey,
Right, send me somebody that you've actually worked with that you
Yeah.
know that does good work personally.
That's what's neat about the team dynamic
That's
too,
it.
though, is because like something that I might have a bunch of, somebody else might not have, or vice versa. So it's
Right.
like we can offer that real first-hand experience where it's not just a random thing. It's like, okay, well, I trust you, so I'm going to trust your roofer.
Right, and that's big.
That's
But think
awesome.
about that
big.
from the consumer, right? This same conversation happens in the general public, right? With the layperson. They go into real estate, or they not go into real estate, but they're looking to buy a property, their first investment property, their first home, whatever the situation is. They're doing the same thing with their friends, right? And I think that's why working in this dynamic at an elevated pace, with elevated procedures and processes, with high performing individuals that are problem solvers, those are the agents you want to work with, right? And that's who's going to get the referral. And I think that's what it really goes back to is, am I doing the work that someone is going to say to their first cousin, their coworker, you want to work with Amanda, you want to work with James, you want to work with Lisa, you want to work with Ronnie, and here's why. And then they become your spokesperson. I think that, to me, in any profession, is when somebody speaks your praises at that level, I mean, it's just gold. It's gold. But it goes back to, if you're connected, do you do the job? Are you a good communicator? Do you problem solve? And I think that's what's exciting about this dynamic and this conversation.
Well, we all specialize in different things too.
Correct.
Like if somebody needs the new construction, like I would be fine with referring that to James.
Absolutely.
And then we can still work together on it. And you know, if somebody wants, I don't know, East Panama City or a condo East 38 or a condo in Panama City, well, that's in my neighborhood, you know? So like maybe that's something that I handle. But if someone wants
A $10 million house.
a community investment, I might refer that to Lisa. So like that's what's really cool is we can kind of bounce that off of us within the group and still all in together.
Absolutely.
Part
all of us.
of this conversation today is also about how are you, because you guys work on the buyer's end and the seller's end, like what are you doing in conversation when working with other buyers from other brokerages and other teams, and when they come to you and you're the listing agent? How are you starting to have those conversations about protecting their buyer's agency agreement or their compensation? Because that's really what people are the most concerned about right now with this NAR litigation that's going on. What are the conversations that you guys are having when somebody is not from our team or not from our organization and they want to do business with you?
So I'll take it from a new construction standpoint, because I've been having these conversations a lot, just getting kind of dialed in with that expectation. And because agents are my best customers, hands down, right? So when it came out that buyers agent commissions might be going away, I was very transparent that, guys, we were planning on offering, compensation to buyer's agent moving forward. So that's not going away on our part. I've been very clear on that to all my agents and stuff, because that's my bread and butter.
Well, with all of our developments, so no matter who the builder is that we work with from a new construction standpoint, that's what I've been touting, is that Abbott Martin Group and the developers and builders that we work with, we're going to protect your compensation. In no way are we going to use some misinformation with what's going on in this NAR litigation to not take care of our own people. To not say, hey, we know the work that you put in. We know your due diligence. We know that you have the client that's the right fit for our product. We're going to make sure that you're taken care of. So I love that you brought that up for new construction, especially because there's so much confusion in that regard.
And from the seller or the developer perspective, like that's incentivizing their property as well. Like people aren't supposed to pay attention to that, but let's all be real, people pay attention to it. So, I think like not having to worry about that and having that already taken care of, that just creates an easier flow and experience for both the buyer and the seller.
Absolutely.
And then if there is a situation like where, as we were talking about this earlier, where somebody does have that buyer agent agreement, which we're going to potentially have to have now, I think that's great because it also kind of binds that relationship to where, hey, we're going to be looking at property maybe for 3 months, and it gives a clearer picture of what am I offering you and providing for you, and what do you need to in turn provide for me. And I think sometimes it's not intentional, but buyers don't always know how the process works. And we had situations where they call and say, oh my gosh, I went to this open house and it was amazing, and I put an offer in on it.
And you're like 6 months down the day.
6 months, and like that's heartbreaking for us. And we're like, oh really? Like I thought I could do a good job for you, and they're like, yeah, you've been amazing. But this agent in the building said I had to go through her, and that agent is not being transparent with them. Like we always make sure to ask those questions, like, hey, are you working with an agent already? Because I want to make sure that their agent is protected. Absolutely. And sometimes that gets lost in the mix, and so that's one positive of having to have those agreements, is it really helps us have that opportunity to sit down and have a real conversation about how the process works, what falls into the, is okay and not okay, and be like, hey, if you had a problem at open house, totally fine. Just, maybe communicate that to them, that you are represented. And I think that helps the process be fine-tuned a little bit more, or sometimes it can be confusing and like things get shifted on accident sometimes. It's not always like on purpose that they're potentially, going the other way. So I think that's a positive thing for it. And then like I've had many listing appointments since this came up, and just being able to help explain it to them properly where they understand it, because there is a lot, as you said, like a lot of information that's not being conveyed properly. So just explaining, hey, this is what's happening, and there is a potential where the buyer's agent may already have that worked out for them, but you're still allowed to do that. We just have to present it differently, and just kind of being able to have it make sense to them. And then generally, at least from our experience so far, it hasn't really been much of a problem. I mean, like they want to put their house in the best position to sell. They want to make it an easy situation for both the buyer and selling agent, and then just us being able to communicate that back to the agents. I think it's huge. Say, hey, we got you covered. We know you work hard. We're on either side, so let's, it just makes it an easier, smoother transaction if it's already kind of dialed in.
And that's true, because you also, I think in good faith, that buyer's agent has had that conversation with their buyer as well. It takes the pressure off it. On the listing side, we would never go into a listing without an agreement. It's not there.
Yeah, it's interesting that we've never had to have them for the buyer.
Right? And so you think about that. When we go to a listing appointment, like we're laying out.
It's not just a handshake, like, all right, I'll sell your house.
It's not open to a handshake deal. It's like, this is what I will do. Questions, how do you market the home? This is what we're going to do to market it. We've got a marketing expert. We've
We
got...
cover the expense of the photography. Make
So-
it easy for you.
Right. So, it's funny we talk about door openers, all right?
Yeah.
That's what agents. No, I think when we go to these meetings to get the listing, that is a professional meeting. It's a value. There's no difference between side other than we don't have to do the agreements. They should have always been signed if you're honest about that.
Yeah.
We set the expectation with the seller from the very beginning on what we do, what services we provide, and how we're compensated. Right? It's no different than on the buy side. Yes, we may not have to explain those things before, but we probably should have.
Probably should have. I think that's really the biggest piece, is that's what's coming into light, is probably
And they ask
should
them,
have.
how do you earn your money? What are you worth? They feel that way because we never explained to them our worth. Like you said, out the things that we do, we don't announce. We just do it. Whether it's scheduling or whether that's looking at reports and dealing with the other agent behind the scenes to figure out something that could potentially be small, and we can fix, we can remedy that.
Yeah, getting the insurance quotes for them in advance so they're not having to deal with it, like making that stuff smooth for them. Honestly, there's a lot of agents that don't do that. They're like, what do you mean you get insurance quotes? Right. I'm like, yeah, shop around for them and get them the best rate, because they might get their own too, and that's fine. Like, oh my gosh, mine's $3,000 a year. I'm like, well, I found one for $1,800.
There it is.
Here you go.
Yeah, and that goes back to our team just going above and beyond.
Yeah.
So we show our value, we lay it out in front of them, and we show them essentially what we're worth, where normally we wouldn't. And then they, God forbid, they get a different agent because, on their next transaction, because maybe they're in another state, or maybe we do it all the time, we'll just contact them. It's the truth. And then they come back to us and they say, there's no way I'm working with anybody else. Like, they at that point in time know what value we offer. And it becomes...
I think ultimately, guys, this is a huge opportunity for the agents to separate themselves, to be the elite, to add value. If you got
expectations,
manage the expectations up front, to say, hey, this is why I do what I do, this is why I'm worth what I'm worth, right up front, and now we've got to sign.
That's it.
So, just like you said on the listing side, now we're going to have it on the buyer side, and the agents who adapt are going to do great with
That's
it.
it.
I got a feeling the four on this couch are going to do okay.
Accountability.
I think one thing though too is like it can be really scary, especially for a new home buyer, where they're like, oh my gosh, I have to pay potentially 2 or 3%, or whatever that number is, which obviously can be negotiated. But I think it can be scary for them because I can barely afford the down payment. How am I now going to be able to do this? And I think it's taking that pressure off of them to say, hey, we can actually negotiate this as part of the offer as a closing cost credit.
Right.
You may have on this piece of paper that has to come from you, but we can still request for, let's say a $10,000 closing cost credit towards you. Well, maybe X amount goes to the agent and X amount goes back to you and your new home, that you get to have some extra cash to put paint on the walls, or whatever that is just reassuring them is we're going to do everything possible to make this a smooth transaction for you on whichever side of the coin we're on, and not being afraid to try to negotiate for those things to where everybody wins and can
There's a lot of different
It's such a good point. I mean,
Yeah, and like being creative with that, because like the seller may be like, well, gosh, I don't want to do a $10,000 credit. And it's like, well, actually, we got them to raise the price to X amount to, because that across 30 years of their loan, it's going to be worth it for them to get that 10 grand for closing day to be able to close the house properly and have the funding they need to get it done. Like, so this is a win-win. You got a higher price, they got a credit, you know, and then
it's reframing the conversation, right?
And I think the conversations with sellers are, again, we really do need to lift up our buyers agents that are out there, and encourage them to offer, because yes, they are experienced, they've vetted their buyer, they're not going to get emotional when the inspection report comes in, they're going to talk them down, they're going to work on trying to negotiate it and keep it moving forward. And I think that, you know, we have a lot of first-time home buyers, we have a lot of military buyers, and they don't necessarily have the money for the closing cost, let alone for a buyer agency commission or compensation, right? So, you know, by encouraging your seller to offer it, you also can use that aspect that is probably going to get you in front of more buyers.
Absolutely.
Because there are going to be those buyers that say, don't show me any properties that are not going to offer compensation for you because I don't have it.
It's true.
So,
That's very
you know,
true.
using that to encourage them, you know, can help. And I've had conversations with my sellers, and they ask questions about it, and they're like, oh no, we know what you did for us. Yeah, they're definitely worth their money. We will pay it.
right? And they may not know how it's going to work in the beginning, but I think it's just having the conversation. Hey, let's give me the opportunity to be able to negotiate this. If we're going to buy and we can't get the house over this, like we're going to find a way to make it work. You know what I mean? So I think like it may be scary to sign that at the beginning, but I think if you just can do some reassuring there, you know, we're going to find a way to make it work one way or another. And sometimes that does mean helping out the buyer and the seller, and we've done that before. And I'm not afraid to do that either, because at the end of the day, it's about, you know, helping them win to be able to get a home, or on the other side, like, you know, I've had situations like, hey, I may be a higher tier to start, but like that also gives me room where if there's an AC that's $5,000 and, you know, the agents have to throw some in to make that work, like we're generally willing to do that if it's the right situation. So
I'm
let's
gonna
all work together, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to wrap up this conversation, but I want everybody to kind of share a takeaway of something that's really of value for the viewer from watching our little podcast from today. What's one thing that, you know, your buyer should understand moving forward over the next couple months when working with you or another agent in our market?
I would say right now, with the settlement coming up and everything, don't believe all the doom and gloom in the news. Let's start with that, with the settlement, and then just with the housing market in general, because they're trying to say it's going down and everything, you know, a lot of that. So just give them the good information and try to not pay attention to all that doom and gloom in the media.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I mean, I think there's a lot of hype going around it, and it's just being able to communicate properly and letting them know that we have their back and we're here for, like, truly here for them, and available and communicative, and we'll work hard and are comfortable with pushing through the challenging stuff that may come. And I think with all of our experience individually and as a team, we can definitely kind of push through those obstacles a little more than the average agent, and be able to get to the finish line for them.
I would say for me that it really is important to be able to relate with the agent of choice. That you need to ask the questions. You need to make sure that you understand that you can clearly communicate with them, and that you begin to build a relationship of trust. If something seems off, that may not be the agent. I mean, you know, some of us don't gel, right? If it's not our people. For whatever reason, they're not. So it is important to be comfortable with who you choose. But at the Abbott Martin Group, you won't go wrong with any of us.
I love that. Ronnie?
Business as usual.
Yeah.
Watch us work. It's that's just it. I think you pick your person, right? We're on a journey together. It's just pick your person. Make sure that you trust your person, and it's another day at the office. It's another day at the office.
Yeah, speaking of our office today, Ronnie, do you want to plug this listing?
Hey, also, 3635 West County Highway 30A.
It's a stunning home.
It
is.
It's such a sexy
Gorgeous
home.
home. I mean,
Gulfview.
I have seen this thing come up from the ground, and it is probably one of my favorite buys. It is probably the favorite property I've ever been inside of. I mean, Gulfview's with the 4th floor. We're just under 4,000 square feet of living space, just under 2,400 square foot of outdoor covered living space. Private pool, outdoor kitchen. I mean, it is a truly custom home. Gulfview's.
Prime location.
Boom!
The west end of 30.
West end of 30.
Plus lots of restaurants, not far from
Next
Green
door, you can
Beach.
hear live music from the local catch while drinking a bev.
From your rooftop patio.
On your rooftop patio.
I love that.
You can see the Gulf
It's a
with
lifestyle.
no Gulf insurance prices. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's good.
You got trees around you and beautiful finishes. I mean, Lindsay's lights everywhere.
I love those lights.
That's awesome.
It's beautiful. Bring us a buyer, please.
That's our shameless plug for this property. But I cannot say thank you each enough for spending time discussing something that seems to still kind of be up in the air right now. But I think it's so important that other agents in the market see your knowledge. I think that it's important that buyers in the market see your collective knowledge and see us as an organization that still protects the buyer's agency agreement and their compensation and adds clarity through a process that changes all the time in the state, especially in the state of Florida. So thank you for your leadership and for all of your insight today. It's been very, very helpful. Thank you.
And if you get to work with us, you also get to work with Adam over here, who is amazing with his marketing
Marketing
and guidance and skill level, and just kind of puts us to another level. So that's a huge addition to the team that both buyer and seller get to, cross paths with.
Yeah, we have a thank you for that. But as an operational piece in this region of the country, we have a stellar team that provides so many opportunities and layers of support across the board for our buyers and for our sellers. And so it's something that is really unique to this team, I think. Not everybody gets a director of operations and, an ISA that has got 20 years of experience in real estate, listing coordinator, and it's a unique proposition for sure, and it does create some support and security, I think, for both parties through the transaction.
Yeah, and for us, it helps us provide a more seamless experience for our customers. So
Absolutely.
that's huge.
Well, thank you guys so much, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.